everybody. Welcome to this episode of Think Business. I'm looking forward to talking with Dr. Jon Marashi. Dr. Marashi, it's great to have you on the show. Jon is an oral health entrepreneur and renowned dentist behind the world's most famous smiles, including Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Cher, Hudson, Pink, Nicolas Cage. Beyond his private practice, he also launched M Sonic Luxury Tonic toothbrush and was a founding member of Byte, a disruptive oral healthcare brand acquired for $1 billion in 2020. Well, that's a great resume for a dentist. And so I want to kind of talk about this. One thing that seems to me is that sometimes my dad was a dentist. All of his friends were dentists. I grew up around so many dentists. And one thing I always found was that they really had to work hard at understanding the business element of dentistry. They were taught dentistry in school, but they weren't taught business. And my dad was very proactive in listening to tapes and reading books, and actually got me hooked from the time of 18. He recommended The Psychology of Success by Brian Tracy. So I knew at 18 I wanted to be a business coach and do what I'm doing based on his proactive approach to learning business. So I want to start off and talk about, you have such a renowned practice, but you also have other businesses. So I want to know, how did you and what did you do to get the best of both worlds?
Thanks for having me on the show today, Jon. It's an honor and privilege to be here. Dentistry is really an incredible career because you can do so many different things with it. And, I think my career has certainly been proof in the pudding that you don't have to limit yourself just to one thing. In my particular story, a lot of it has revolved around my curiosity that I've had. I've always been trying to think, like, what else is there? What else would be fun? What else would be interesting? What else would be different? And I'm sure you've heard the saying, you want better answers, you have to start asking better questions.
Yeah.
When I bought my first dental practice, which was, over 20 years ago, I realized that I had a foundation of how to work on teeth. And, as you mentioned, that's what we get trained how to do in school. But running and managing this business was a completely different skill set. And part of my personality of being curious is also, wanting to be not just good at what I'm doing, but exceptional. And you realize very quick, if you're willing to have an honest look at yourself in the mirror, where deficiencies are and shortcomings. And it was very obvious to me that, hey, there is this whole other aspect of what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life, that if I don't put attention to detail and learn, an additional skill set and get mastery over it, it could be a really long and hard road. And so that's where my journey began on the business side of dentistry.
That's great. You're talking about managing people too. I think that is, that's a staple. Most people, they don't teach how to manage people in school. And I know a little bit about managing a dental office. My dad was a dentist, so I grew up in a dental office. And, my dad had people who worked for him for 30, 40 years. And, but yet it's still, managing was a big piece. What have you learned about that you can share about managing people? What makes a good manager?
What I've learned about managing is that, from the infancy of my career to, where I'm at more of, kind of at the peak of my career, is the culture that you establish. And also there's a saying, you get what you tolerate.
Yeah.
And third, I would say managing is not micromanaging. And in the beginning of my career, where I was trying to make sure everybody was doing everything right, it's like what you're doing is you're actually getting in the way of things getting done. And I didn't give people the space they needed to do their job and show me they could be proficient, because I was so worried about perfection. And how I have transitioned and evolved over the years is hiring talent for desire to learn, for people who are coachable, for people who want to get an A on their report card, not people who dread report card day.
Yeah.
And those are the folks that when you give them what their outcomes and deliverables are, they want to show you what they're capable of doing. They have an internal need to be successful. And by adopting that framework, what it's allowed me to do is lead by example, manage where needed, but not have to micromanage.
Yeah. How do you do that? I think sometimes people who aren't looking at people who aren't trained in business, sometimes they accidentally micromanage. And so what tips can you give to not micromanage, to kind of let go and let things kind of play out?
The best thing to do is to have a system where the person in whatever position in your organization holds reports up to you. That eliminates the need for micromanaging. So if the expectation is set as here's your deliverables, this is what you're in charge of, and on every X interval of time, we'll have a sit down and you're going to give me an update as to where you are. When your employee comes to you and says, hey boss, look what I've accomplished, A, B, and C, and they've met it or exceeded it, what does that tell me as an employer? Like, oh my God, this is fantastic. I don't have to do this. I don't have to manage it. And it also creates a system of trust between employer and employee. It gives the employee a sense of empowerment. And it also kind of creates an internal system of checks and balances, because it eliminates me now having to go back to that person constantly. Did you get this done? Has this been done? They know that part of their responsibility is to bring it to me and say, this has been done. Here's an update as to where we are on things.
Yeah. If you had to go back in time, what one or two classes would you teach? Not only at dental school, but recommend they teach at law school and any med school?
The first I would say is just basic communication skills with people, because talking with your friends and colleagues is totally different than the conversations you have as a leader in the organization with your employees.
Yeah.
You wear so many different hats, and managing personalities is a challenge. It's a challenge I'm willing to bet if you took a cross section of all business owners, most of them are going to raise their hand and say, yeah, it's the team, the staff, the workforce where the perception of most of the problems are. And so, learning how to effectively communicate, because, you have to be able to develop these bonds with people that they believe you, like you, trust you, respect you, buy into the philosophy of the organization and the objectives. And that's not easy, especially when you have multiple employees.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy for folks to get stuck, or for managers, owners to get stuck in the I say you do mentality, as opposed to let's just be clear about what the organizational goals are, and how do we get to these outcomes.
Yeah, well said. I agree with you. It's some people overcomplicate it, and I like the way you simply put it. I find that when I go into organizations that bring me in, just getting rid of a lot of addition by subtraction, and just kind of getting things tight and specific and measurable, so people kind of know what's going on. It's so simple, it's complicated at times. So I appreciate you sharing that. Let's talk about so you're an oral health entrepreneur, renowned dentist, behind the world's most famous smiles. And so how does someone go from graduating dental school to working on the most famous smiles? What was the journey?
It's been a heck of a journey, let me tell you. And I get asked that question all the time, like, how did you become dentist to the stars? And my default answer has always been, well, it was an overnight success. It's just taken 25 years.
Yeah.
And, if you think about it, like, practicing in Los Angeles, which is the epicenter of the entertainment industry, I don't care where in LA you are, it's actually quite difficult to not land a client that works in entertainment in some capacity. but it just may not be someone on the A list, obviously. It
Yeah.
might be someone, who's, maybe is an assistant to an assistant. You're starting with people way down, and slowly over time, because what I do is so heavily relationship based. Dentistry is very intimate in the regards
Yeah.
of, like person's really got to disarm themselves to let you do what you got to do to get the job done.
Yeah.
And what I found is, as I became more proficient as a dentist, but also very caring and nurturing, as a human towards these people, you start developing personal relationships. And the people that are closest to me in my life are all my patients. And, like my best friends on the planet, I all met at work, which is, for me, it's just such an incredible joy and blessing to have. And so, over time, you get from, someone who is like way down, and then one day you get someone on the C list, right? And then finally, like a couple of years later, you're someone on the B list till you get, someone who's on the A list. And that's the hardest one, is cracking that circle. And if you do a great job with it, what you're banking on, like many other businesses, is for them to be your missionaries, where they want to share what you do with their friends, with their colleagues, with their family. And now you have momentum. And you've reached a threshold, and you keep depositing credits into it, of the hard work, and you start getting more and more and more. And it's like, what's that saying, like the snowflake that turns into like an avalanche going down the hill, but it has to get to a critical mass.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And today I think patience is really important. I think so many people want instant gratification, and like you said, a 25-year overnight success. How would you advise people to tap into patience? Not patience as in your patience, but tap into patience because I don't think business has changed in the way of having to do the fundamental things to grow your business, grow your brand, grow your reputation, grow your good work. How would you recommend people tap into that?
I mean, to have the patience to do it is, I think that really is, it's a mental game, right? Because the perception of our world has changed, through, social media and content, that there's an immediate gratification component associated with everything. And that's not reality. They say that a lot of stuff you see online, isn't real. It's theater. And to the lives that people are really living, or the success that people are portraying and so forth. And, a business coach that I've worked with had told me something that resonated really well, that ordinary things done consistently yield extraordinary results.
Yeah.
And I've actually, I thought about that, and I said, okay, so, how do I make this my own? Like, what are like my kind of 3 things that I focus on in my daily life and my business life? And I've distilled it to, number 1 is knowing your outcome. What is it that you're headed to? And I tell folks, like, look, it's okay to change your mind, but start with something, so you have something to head towards. Number 2, fastest way to get there, coaches and mentors.
Yeah.
Hands down, like immersion learning, being the dumbest person in the room at all time. I've spent my life doing that, trying to be the dumbest person in the room, because that was my opportunity to learn from people who were successful, who were already reached, certain plateaus and levels of success that I wanted to do. That's where the real learning comes from, is that immersion learning. And the third part is the discipline and consistency, that you have to have in order to do it. Like the original saying, like you didn't get overweight from the one potato chip that you ate.
Right.
So, it's the discipline of not eating potato chips, and sleep, diet, exercise, all these things. And people know, like that's what you got to do if you want to be healthy. And, with business, like to be healthy in business, there is a formula for it, and it's not sexy by any stretch of the imagination, but neither is dieting. But guess what? They both work.
Yeah. Well, to your point, I have a philosophy. It's kind of a tagline. It's called Think Big. But the way I define thinking big is reverse engineering to the small things that you have to do every day consistently to get to the big. And a lot of times when I'm doing speaking or training, I ask the audience, if you could, if I would you take $1 million today, or a penny that doubles every day for 30 days to be paid out on the 31st day? And a lot of people raise and want the million right away, would take the million right away. But the penny that doubles every day is $10.7 million. But the piece of it that I find the most interesting, that it isn't really until day 27 where the penny gets to 671,000. So those 26 days, that's the angst, that's the resistance. There's a book, one of my favorite books. It's called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. I don't know if you've read it, but the book is about resistance and why we resist what we need to do most. And I think that's something that people resist, is the patience to just do everything, to live on the plateau. I read a book many years ago by George something called Mastery, and it was all about, if you want to be successful, get comfortable living on the plateau, because if you do the small things every day, that's the plateau. And so I love what you're saying about the outcome and the fastest way to get there: immersion learning, discipline, consistency. That's great. Let's talk about your business, Byte. Tell me about that, and how it came about, and ultimately the sale. And congratulations on that.
Thank you. It's really a testament to the discipline and consistency and the power of relationships. A client of mine introduced me to a guy who lived down the street when I moved to a new neighborhood, and she really went out of her way to do it. And guy ended up becoming my friend. And after she really worked hard to make sure to connect us, and fast forward a couple years later, he asked me to sit down and talk with him and his friend about a possible business idea, which ended up being Byte. And they didn't know anything about dentistry, but thought that there was an area in the market where there was an opportunity for some disruption. And as I listened to it, I had some feedback. I said, I think these are good ideas, and maybe I would reconsider a couple things here. And it was very obvious to me, because I'd been thinking long and heavy about what other opportunities could there be for me outside my clinical practice, that I said, guys, I want to be partners with you too. And they were like, wow, you think there's some legs to this? So, it took us a year to go from idea to launch. And when the company launched, part of what was used at that time was my brand, my personal brand, if you will, of being, Doc Hollywood, to give this thing some legs and credibility. And then the strategy over time, of course, was to pull me back and let the brand stand on its own. And, for the listeners, Byte was direct to consumer clear aligners. So, think Invisalign. And we had some really fortuitous market timing, because we were about a year in and starting to get some traction with sales, and then the COVID hit. And, as all business owners know, most of us thought that we were dead in the water at that point. My dental practice had to close up shop because people couldn't be in contact with, in proximity with one another. But something really interesting happened. Now, all of a sudden, people can't go to the dentist. And how are people communicating? Instead of face-to-face, it's over Zoom and FaceTime. And now all of a sudden, people are seeing what their faces look like, and that's inclusive of their smiles and their teeth. And now they're sitting at home, and Byte was the solution that people, wanted and needed at the time. Sure. And so, we had very strong business fundamentals, and, we were bootstrapped as well, which really helped us, to be nimble and pivot. And we had a great infrastructure set that we were able to meet the demand. And, by the end of the COVID year, we had about $100 million run rate. And I'll take this back to the power of relationships. Client in my office was an investment banker at Goldman Sachs, and he ended up connecting us with the company that acquired us, just through chatting with him, during his teeth cleaning. So, it was really just an incredible story. And, there was absolutely an element of luck, but there was also our ability to respond to what, we were in position, I guess is what I was really trying to say, is that, when your business is in position, when the environment changes, you can adapt and move forward.
Yeah.
And, had we not had a good infrastructure set up, and I don't think we would have weathered the storm. And so, it ended up being quite the opposite.
It's great. Seizing the moment. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. That's great. All right. Two quick speed rounds. One quick speed round on dentistry. Why and how often to floss?
So, I tell why, because if you want to keep them, that's about it. If you want to keep them. And, how often, a lot of dentists will tell you, like, after every time you eat, this is life. And I don't even carry floss with me after every single meal. But nighttime is the best, because you're done eating at that point. You get the crud off your teeth before your mouth is dormant and bacteria like to move around.
It's great. Best toothpaste. Your favorite?
I like the company called Hello, Hello.
Yeah.
Doesn't have preservatives in it. Tastes good. It's just it's a really great product.
Can you get fluoride free?
They do. They have fluoride free. They even have activated charcoal for teeth whitening.
Okay. That was going to be my next question. Best teeth whitener.
So for, in a toothpaste, I like the activated charcoal one, because it does a good job with like coffee, tea, red wine, things like that. But for bright, after the surface stains are removed, to brighten the color of your tooth, now you have to have something that's hydrogen peroxide based. And, there's over-the-counter products like Crest White Strips. Everyone's heard of those. And they're a professional in office, in a dental office setting where they can actually paint a professional grade peroxide to, internally lighten the teeth.
All right, good. How often should people get their teeth cleaned?
Every 3 months. I mean, that's just, we now know that bacteria and tartar and plaque formation, happens about 90-day intervals.
Okay, good. Best toothbrush, regular or electric?
Electric. Yeah. Throw the manual one away. I mean, that's like caveman technology.
Okay. All right. I think I got across those. All right. Now, different speed round. Book that's had a big impact on you.
The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham.
Oh, I haven't heard that one. That sounds hilarious. That sounds like a great book.
So he's actually my business coach, and it's written for the layperson, and it really trains you to think about, how to think.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. I've read a lot of the books, and this is my all-time favorite that I think is relevant.
That's great. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Best piece of wisdom, probably from my wife, where she says, "Do you really want to do that?"
Yeah. And last question, one thing everybody can do to tap into their entrepreneurial spirit is?
It's sitting down and thinking about it. I think thinking is an underrated and underused activity. Just getting yourself isolated from everything and just start writing. That's when you're distraction free, that's when your best ideas come out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. First thing I do when I wake up every morning is meditate. I journal, get ideas out of my head. Great advice. Think community. This has been a great talk with Dr. Jon Marashi. Jon, tell everybody where they can connect with you and who your ideal clients are.
Oh, thank you very much. Best way to find me is on Instagram. My handle is at DrJonMarashi, so at Dr. Jon Marashi. And yeah, my ideal clients are people who want to make their smile look better. That's what I do. I make people smile and look good and feel good about themselves.
Great. It's great. This has been great. It's been great to connect with you and hear your wisdom and how you run not only your practice but your businesses. Think community. I love this podcast because I'm a business coach. I work with people who are successful and stuck. I get them unstuck, and guests like Jon help me with my mission of getting people unstuck. I just want to highlight, you said a lot of great things, Jon, but one thing in particular is kind of part 3 of your 3 pillars, which is discipline and consistency. And I think, those are a lot of times the keys that really keep things moving forward. And so think community, we talk a lot about consistency on this show and the importance of it. And it is fueled by discipline. Doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but progress over perfection, of course. But keep those in mind. And if you can be 1% more consistent and 1% more disciplined, you'll see great strides in your business and your life. Dr. Jon Marashi, great to connect with you. This was great. I appreciate your time. Tell them one more time your Instagram handle.
At Dr. Jon Marashi, DrJonMarashi.
This is great. And you can reach me at johndwoskin.com if you want to chat about any business coaching. Jon, thanks. This was great. Thanks so much.
All right.